Hello and welcome to Solar Alberta's 2024 Solar Series. Today's session is called Building Equity in Green Homes. We are delighted to have so many people register for this event. Please note that we will be recording this webinar for future distribution. My name is Stephanie Westland and I am the Solar Training Lead at Solar Alberta. I would like to take a minute to acknowledge that I am hosting you today and working day-to-day from Mohkinstsis, also known as Calgary, Alberta, Canada, which is located on the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. This includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, made up of the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations, the Îethka Stoney Nakoda Nations, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstoney bands, and the Tsuut'ina First Nation. And Calgary is also homeland to the historic Northwest Métis and to Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. Today, we will be hearing from Heather McKenzie, Stephanie Drozda, and Graham Bixie. Following their presentation, there will be a question and answer period in which you can all participate. The entire session will wrap up in about an hour and a half. In an effort to increase accessibility, we have enabled closed captioning for this presentation. You can turn the captioning on in the toolbar at the bottom of your Zoom screen. During our question and answer period, we will be using Zoom Q&A for questions rather than the chat box. So please enter your questions in the Q&A section. Also, please click on the little thumbs up symbol to upvote the questions you like. Before we move forward, we are going to do a quick poll to get a sense of who we have joining us today. Please take a minute to answer the question popping up on your screen now. And while some of you are still doing the poll, I encourage you to take a minute and pop your name, land acknowledgement, and any contact information you are comfortable sharing in the chat now and throughout the event so that others can look you up on LinkedIn or email you. It's a great way to form new relationships. Wonderful. Thank you for participating. It's just always great to know a little bit about who we have in the audience. And it looks like we have really a great mix between solar curious, solar enthusiasts, and industry professionals. So now let's share a little bit about Solar Alberta. Did you know that Solar Alberta is now in its 33rd year of operation? Albertans have been pretty excited about solar for a while now. We are a non-for-profit society dedicated to accelerating Alberta's transition to a just and sustainable energy future. We do so by advocating, educating, and serving as an industry and community hub for solar energy. Our membership is made up of over 240 individuals and over 160 businesses. We also have over 21,400 followers. We provide a number of services, including managing a solar directory through our website. In this way, we act as a bridge for installers, suppliers, and other solar-related businesses to connect with their customers and clients. Our directory gets over 48,000 hits each year. You can see a screenshot of the directory here on this slide and a link to it in the chat. You can filter our directory based on services provided by our members, the region of the province or country where our members operate, and according to the various commitments and certifications that our members have made. In addition to our website services, we run a number of educational programs, including our solar show, a solar seminar series, and a number of in-person and online networking events each year. Our next Solar Series session is the opening seminar of the 2025 Solar Series, Indigenous Solar Leadership, which will take place on January 23rd at noon Mountain Time, and we will be learning about the remarkable work of Indigenous Clean Energy with James Jenkins, Executive Director of ICE. Registration for this workshop can be completed through the link in the chat. Also, our 2025 Solar Show is coming soon. It will run from February 3rd to 7th, 2025. More details about the sessions and speakers will be announced shortly. Recordings of previous Solar Show sessions and seminars can be found on our Solar Alberta YouTube channel. Please sign up for our newsletter and follow us on social media to find out about all of our upcoming events. This fall, we are once again offering a number of online courses for solar industry professionals or those transitioning into the sector. Next up is Solar PV Systems Electrical Code. The updated Canadian Electrical Code comes into effect in Alberta on April 1st, 2025, and most other provinces around the same time. The code includes significant updates related to solar PV systems, including changes that affect the placement of inverters and a new option for initiating rapid shutdown. The updates are also important for solar-related technologies such as energy storage and electric vehicle wiring. You can register for all of our courses at the link provided in the chat. Recordings of these courses are also available for sale alongside our paid workshops on the solar training videos section of our website. A link to our on-demand video offerings is being placed in the chat. In addition to providing education about solar, we also advocate for it. We are rising up for renewables. We have free lawn signs available to pick up in 10 municipalities and also now offer free delivery in 8 of those municipalities around the province. We are very grateful to our dedicated volunteers for making so much free delivery possible. We also have template letters for you to use on our website, asking the Government of Alberta to eliminate the new and discriminatory buffer zones that they have established for renewable energy. Your support with our advocacy efforts is important. You can click on the link in the chat to make a free sign order or to find our template letters today. We are also excited to announce that our online 50/50 fundraiser is already over $900. Raffle ticket purchasers provide essential support for our mission to accelerate Alberta's transition to a just and sustainable energy future, with the proceeds of the raffle going toward free education programs and so much more. It's a great way to help us grow knowledge about the solar industry in the province, and you have a chance to win big. To participate, you must be at least 18 years of age and an Alberta resident. Ticket sales end on February 7th, 2025 at 12:55 p.m. Mountain Time. The draw will then take place on February 7th, 2025 at 1 p.m. Please find the link in the chat for more information and to buy tickets. If you are not already, I encourage you to join Solar Alberta as a member. We are constantly evolving our member service offerings, some of which include discounts on our courses and workshops, access to members-only content, and more. Individual membership is $35 and can be purchased at the link in the chat. We are also looking to support, if you are looking to support the work that we are doing at Solar Alberta, please consider volunteering or donating. The link to be a general volunteer is being popped in the chat now, as well as links to our donation page. Now, without further ado, I would like to take this opportunity to give a shout out to Firefly Solar for sponsoring this year's seminar series, and Park Power for sponsoring this session in particular. We couldn't offer all of the amazing free content without the support of our sponsors. We are always interested in developing more partnerships for our events. If you or your company want to work with us to educate the public about solar or solar-related technologies, please don't hesitate to reach out. Now I'd like to introduce our sponsor for this session, Chris Kozowski from Park Power. Chris will tell us a little bit about Park Power and introduce our presenters for today. Welcome, Chris, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, and good day, everybody, and welcome. Happy to have everybody here. Park Power. So Park Power is your friendly local utilities provider. We're very solar friendly. Since 2013, we've been offering services to customers in Alberta. We offer electricity, natural gas, and internet to customers all across Alberta. As well, Park Power has long been a solar supporter, especially through Solar Alberta, through both membership and sponsorship. We really support the work they do and really value its place in our province. With another thing about Park Power, just to finish, is for those that don't know that are solar friendly, when you are choosing who you pay your electricity bills to, your choice matters. And Park Power Solar Club rates are a great option that help people with solar and who invested in solar earn more from their system. And so, without further ado, I'd like to just do the introductions for our speakers. So first up, you're going to have Heather McKenzie from Solar Alberta. Heather McKenzie is the Executive Director at Solar Alberta, where she and her team are working hard to accelerate Alberta's transition to a just and sustainable energy future. Heather is a seasoned leader, community organizer, and green business advocate. Before coming to Solar Alberta, she worked as a government relations professional, ran her own business, and served as an elected trustee on the Edmonton Public School Board. While Heather's in the midst of completing a master's in public administration, she already has a master's in international development, and before that, undergraduate degrees in both sociology and history. And Heather really believes in investing solar as a very concrete way that everyday Albertans like you and I can take meaningful action on climate change. After Heather, we're going to have Stephanie Drozda from Alberta Ecotrust. Stephanie Drozda is the program specialist for grants and initiatives at Alberta Ecotrust Foundation. Stephanie aims to connect, support, and advance the ideas and people leading urban climate solutions in Edmonton County. With a passion for the environment cultivated while growing up in rural northern Alberta, Stephanie holds a BSc in environmental economics and policy from the University of Alberta. Great program. She has worked in the sustainability field for over a decade in the post-secondary, municipal, government, and charitable sectors. And then after Stephanie, we're going to have Graham Bixie, who is a program coordinator with the City of Edmonton. Graham holds a master's degree in sustainability, as well as a certified energy manager. And so what he does for the City of Edmonton is he manages the solar rebate program for multi-unit residential buildings, or MURBs. This role involves overseeing program implementation, stakeholder collaboration, just like this, outreach efforts to promote solar PV technology and energy transition efforts. And this is all while focusing on access for diverse and underserved communities during the future program research and development. So everybody should be really excited. And after this session, they're going to go get their Solar Alberta membership if they don't already. But without further ado, I'll pass it on to Heather McKenzie from Solar Alberta.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. Really appreciate having you here again. Our annual check-in. Just going to get my presentation up here for you all. All right. Great. Well, hello again, and thanks for the introduction and the sponsorship, and of course, the dedicated membership, Chris. As Chris mentioned, I'm Heather McKenzie. I'm the Executive Director of Solar Alberta. While Stephanie is hosting us from Treaty 7 territory, I'd like to take a minute to acknowledge that I'm joining you today and working day-to-day from Amiskwaciy-Waskahegan, also known as Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, which is located on Treaty 6 territory and the homelands of the Métis Nation. Treaty 6 territory is the traditional gathering place and home of many Indigenous peoples, including the Papaches, Nehewak, Okri, Saulteaux, Dene, Blackfoot, and Nakota Sioux, nations whose ancestors have cared for and nurtured these lands since time immemorial. To kick off my presentation today, I'm going to discuss enhancing equity in terms of those generating or producing and hence benefiting from solar energy on their homes in Alberta. I'm going to review some of the progress that has been made to date, where some of the gaps still are, and then I'm going to broadly introduce the programs that our two other speakers will address in greater detail. Our two other speakers are taking very concrete steps to address inequities in Alberta's green building space. Although my orientation is towards solar, we realize that solar does not exist in a vacuum, and therefore we've integrated content today related to green buildings in general into the seminar. All right, so some of you like graphs. For those of you who don't worry too much. On the residential solar front, I just want to talk a little bit about the bigger picture. So it's no secret to any of you that the majority of people with solar on their homes in Alberta are a very privileged and select demographic. Until recently, solar has been extremely cost prohibitive for most Albertans. That is beginning to change. As you can see here, the cost of solar panels has dropped dramatically from 1975. And in fact, we saw a 90% drop between 2010 and 2020 alone. So that's the cost dropping. Although the cost has stabilized a bit since then, we don't anticipate it's going to have as much of a dramatic drop again in the near future. But when looking at this graph, it is clear that we are still at an all-time low and has been fairly cost prohibitive to have solar to date. Until now. Here we go. So as a result of a number of factors, including the drop in price that I mentioned globally, as well as a number of exciting government programs and incentives that have further reduced the cost of solar in Alberta, we now have more than 27,000 installations on homes and businesses in Alberta. As you can see from this graph, that number has grown a great deal in recent years. When I first started at Solar Alberta 4 years ago, we were seeing about 100 new installations on homes and businesses in the province each month. we are now seeing more than 1,000 per month. This growth indicates that a wider range of Albertans are beginning to adopt solar and beginning to benefit financially from that investment. That said, there continue to be many Albertans who have not adopted solar and cannot adopt solar. For example, it is extremely rare that a landlord will put solar on a rental unit, and as a result, most renters cannot benefit from the low electricity bills that homeowners are increasingly benefiting from. It's also extremely rare that condominium owners are permitted by their condo boards to adopt solar. And in some high-density condo or rental apartment scenarios, there just isn't enough roof space for solar to offset the electricity of all residents in the building. Low and fixed income homeowners are still underrepresented in the residential solar sector. So I'm going to review a few of the reasons why that might be. For those who still face many barriers to achieving financial stability in their household, it is important to remember what Yasmin Abraham of Empower Me has taught us, that cash is king. When presenting about embedding equity in energy efficiency financing programs, Yasmin, she explained that many households have little ability to absorb changes in short-term cash flow. Therefore, many solar energy financing options that are currently in place, which require upfront cash, either in part or in full, are not accessible to a lot of those people in Alberta. Additionally, Yasmin warned us that debt is not considered an adequate financing tool by many who are facing barriers to equitable solar access. Debt is viewed by and large as something to be used only in emergency situations. And although the climate crisis is an emergency, it wouldn't often register at the household level in Alberta in that way. So it's important to know when considering the design of solar financing incentives, as even the most generous incentives, such as rebates, often still require that some level of debt is taken on. Another barrier is the inability or lack of time to navigate complex rebate and affordable financing program applications. Some programs enable installers to help clients navigate through the applications, and that can be a wonderful tool to address that issue. Other programs are putting coaches in place for applicants, but unfortunately, that's just not the case for all programs. And then there's the fourth barrier, which is the fact that solar can't be installed in thin air. It needs to typically be mounted on a roof. And so you need connectivity to a good roof and as well a good home electricity system. So solar installers are often unable or always unable to complete installations on homes with inadequate roofs and inadequate electrical wiring. It's rare that solar financing mechanisms and incentives enable roof and electrical upgrades to be completed along with the solar. Poor roof quality or aging roof or electrical infrastructure is, of course, a greater problem for low or fixed income households, and so they are left out of the solar sector as a result. A fifth barrier involves home ownership requirements that relate to solar. Alberta's microgeneration regulation allows home or business owners to adopt solar, and there is little to no incentive for landlords to install solar on homes that they are renting out. The Canada Greener Homes Loan Program, which offers 0% interest on a loan over 10 years, for example, is only available for primary residences. And last, though I'm sure there are many other factors that I haven't listed today, inadequate roof space on particularly high-density residential units is a factor that's hard to overcome without some true out-of-the-box thinking, which I would argue we are actually more than capable of. So now let me briefly introduce 5 exciting methods to help overcome these barriers to adoption. First, one important option to enable renters and low-income homeowners to participate in the solar sector is, of course, to fully subsidize installations, just to pay for them. As you will hear about after my presentation, Alberta Ecotrust is working together with the City of Edmonton, the City of Calgary, and ENMAX to roll out an equity-based program for energy efficiency upgrades that will see full subsidized retrofits. And those facing significant barriers in this regard will benefit. So too, a program should be developed whereby those in the greatest need in Alberta could have fully subsidized solar installations. We are yet to get there. Another technique that a number of non-market affordable housing providers have begun using is to ensure that their buildings are solar integrated and energy efficient from the get-go. Here's an example of a recent net zero home completed for the large families by the Mennonite Center for Newcomers and Right at Home Housing Society in Edmonton. One of the things that we're asking the federal government to do is to tie funding for affordable housing to green housing requirements. That way, the housing won't just be affordable up front, but it will be affordable on a month-to-month basis in your utility bills. We have a template letter requesting this on our website for those who are willing to join us in that request. Right now, the standards that the government of Canada is requiring are dated back to 2015, so really not very green at all. It's extremely important to keep in mind when establishing rebate or loan programs that if the resources available are finite, and if you don't have enough money for everyone to participate, then there should be some kind of income testing component for folks over a certain annual household income. For example, $200,000 a year for some programs with a finite amount of resources would be a very easy rate to say, hey, that's the cap. You can't qualify above that. Let's let it spread the money around to those who need it more. For example, the Canadian government has now run out of money for their $5,000 grant that they rolled out for solar just a few years ago. Had they implemented some form of income testing on their program, they could have stretched that program out much further and helped a lot more people who truly need that support. I'm pleased to say that they did hear our request on this matter, and they are planning an equity-based round 2 for this program. But sadly, they're not planning to launch that new program for at least another year or two. And so you should stay tuned because we're going to have another template letter on our website for that matter, because it's a really significant delay in that program. And that delay is only going to hurt people who need it the most, need solar the most. All right, the Clean Energy Improvement Program, you're going to hear a little bit about that from Graham. It's a low-interest green retrofit loan. This is really exciting game changer in Alberta. It's begun rolling out in municipalities all over. You can see a little list here on my screen. It has the potential to enhance equity in terms of solar generation, as well as energy efficiency upgrades because of many unique attributes. First, it is a financing tool that doesn't always require cash up front, though I understand this depends on the municipality. Additionally, the debt that's incurred can be passed from one homeowner to another, which reduces the risk that many barriered individuals might face. One other neat possibility with SEEP is that it can sometimes be inclusive of the roof and electrical upgrades that I mentioned earlier, which are a barrier. Unfortunately, my understanding is that not all municipalities have opted to include roof and electrical upgrades in their SEEP programs, but it is possible, and it is one important consideration for us to ensure that the benefits of at-home solar power generation are experienced by the many and not just the few. SEEP is also relatively unique in that it can be used for rental properties. That means that landlords and tenants could start working together to develop a plan, such as a slight increase in your rent to account for the property tax increase to the owner, which would relate to SEEP. And of course, that would largely be offset by the reduced utility bills. So there's a plan folks can make with their landlords. When making this plan, it will be important to understand the interest rates in the municipalities, as well as whether the planned upgrades are anticipated to result in utility bill cost savings that are equal to or outweigh the property tax increase. In the case that the equation doesn't work out well enough in the short term for the renter to financially benefit, they may still want to go forward, as there are a number of quality life benefits related to increasing the air tightness of a property as well, especially in these smoky times. It's important to acknowledge that SEEP, while SEEP has clearly been developed with equity in mind, there are few, if any, municipalities yet rolling it out in a way that prioritizes low or fixed income homeowners. It's of course still a program that requires homeowners take the lead and therefore will not necessarily benefit renters. To put SEEP to work for solar, one also needs a roof that has enough space and is oriented in a good way for solar. And of course, that can be hard to find, especially in high density living, which leads me to the last tool I'm going to recommend today that I think has great potential for enhancing equity in the solar sector. And that's community solar generation. So community generation is where a group of people come together and invest in a solar development that is not on their own property. A number of cooperatives and Indigenous nations are leading the charge with community generation in Alberta. Pictured here is the Métis Crossing Solar Farm. This project is a 4.86 megawatt community generation solar installation. It's a collaboration between the Métis Nation of Alberta, the town of Smoky Lake, and Smoky Lake County. Community generation is still in its early stages in Alberta, but it will hopefully give apartment dwellers, renters, and others who don't have a solar appropriate roof an opportunity to contribute to solar production in Alberta. Experience the benefits associated with that. We have a couple of free webinars on that topic on our YouTube channel, so I'm not going to talk about it as much today. You're welcome to go check those out. And with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Stephanie and look forward to the question and answer period to follow. Stephanie, feel free to steal my screen share and turn on your camera and mic.
Well, thanks, Heather, and thank you to Solar Alberta for inviting us, or me, to chat to you today about our home upgrades program. So a little bit about Alberta Ecotrust Foundation. We are a registered charity created through a unique partnership between the corporate sector and the environmental community. Over the past 30 years, our programs have expanded to build bridges across sectors, communities, and cultures, focusing on the solution skills and financial support for hundreds of high-impact environmental organizations, programs, and projects across Alberta. We have 4 programmatic areas for our work, including foundation initiatives, which are projects and programs we lead and co-lead, grants that include our Climate Innovation Grant, our Environmental Impact Grant, and our Springboard Grant, focused on the environmental and climate projects led by community organizations, nonprofits, and charities. We have an impact investing arm that allows us to directly invest in the programs and companies that are reducing emissions in Edmonton and Calgary. And then finally, strategic engagement, bringing together different perspectives across sectors. Our focus areas include nature-based solutions and conservation, climate resilience and emissions reductions, and circular economy. About 4 years ago, we became a founding member of something called Low Carbon Cities Canada Network, or LC3. And this is a network of 7 cities across Canada that are working to support climate reduction, emissions reduction, in these cities. So we received a endowment to support climate programming in Edmonton, Calgary. And through the Climate Innovation Fund, we identify, invest in, and scale up solutions covering a broad range of climate solutions. So when we're talking about reducing emissions, part of our theory of change is also looking at how can we generate other benefits for our communities. So we know that the building stock is a major source of emissions in our cities, with approximately 30% of emissions in Calgary and 18% in Edmonton coming from residential homes. So when we're looking at climate programming and especially energy efficiency, how can we also provide other benefits through these programs to our communities? So that might be improving affordability. It might be enhancing air quality. It could be enhancing climate adaptation for the future. And so this approach can also be called multi-solving, which is an intentional or systematic way of designing and delivering programs that are achieving multiple benefits, not just emissions reductions or environmental benefits, but other benefits for our communities. So looking specifically at climate equity, in Alberta, we know that about 1 in 5 Albertans, which is 64,000 families in Calgary and 50,000 in Edmonton, struggle to afford to heat and power their homes. So these are households that spend more than 6% of their after-tax income on energy bills and are considered in energy poverty. For these families, high energy costs can mean compromising on life necessities such as health, food, safety, and comfort. So while Alberta doesn't have until we had our program, Alberta didn't have dedicated public energy efficiency programming for income qualified individuals. There is a broader shift across the province to address climate mitigation work with an equity lens. It's being led by municipalities, utilities, and the nonprofit sector. Equity is also increasingly becoming a priority for organizations like municipalities as we collectively seek to ensure everyone can benefit from climate and energy efficiency programming with tailored approaches to those that have been traditionally underserved. So for example, the City of Edmonton has goals in their community energy transition strategy around eliminating energy poverty and highlights the need to integrate justice and equity into decision-making about climate. The City of Calgary is working on an energy equity strategy that will include targets of, by 2030, decreasing home heating and power problems for half of the people who have troubles today, and by 2050, completely getting rid of home heating and power solutions. So lots of leadership occurring in this space. So in the spring of last year, we launched the Home Upgrades Program. And this is a program offered in partnership between our organization, Alberta Ecotrust Foundation, and Campbell Energy Group, with the support from the municipal sectors, corporations, the philanthropic sectors, including the City of Edmonton, City of Calgary, Calgary Foundation, and other funders. And so this program is really a market-based, community-driven solution to energy poverty. And with the help of this coalition of supporters and funders across different sectors, we came together to fill this gap with a program that provides free energy efficiency education and home upgrades to qualified families living in Calgary, Canmore, Edmonton, and St. Albert. So just a little bit about our program delivery partner, Campbell Energy Group. They, for over almost 15 years, have worked with utilities, governments, Indigenous nations, and other partners to reduce energy poverty, accelerate decarbonization, and improve housing in communities across Canada. So we're very excited to work with them on this program. And of course, we wouldn't be able to do this without our funders and sponsors, particularly our major supporters, the City of Edmonton and Calgary. So this program is really uniquely designed for a unique challenge. So it offers fully subsidized energy retrofits and education, specifically tailored to the unique barriers experienced by lower income communities in Edmonton, Calgary, St. Albert, and Canmore. As Heather touched on, traditional rebate programs aren't always a great fit for folks because you need to have cash up front, or taking on debt isn't always a possibility through something like a financing program. And again, thinking about this multi-solving, or how can our energy efficiency program have multiple benefits. So this program is really around helping households improve their energy affordability, also addressing comfort and safety for households through energy efficiency upgrades and education, all while reducing emissions. So the main program elements, so the goals are to improve affordability, efficiency, and reduce emissions in lower income households. We have the energy saving measures that are included in these upgrades, include things like air sealing, LED lighting, water saving devices, insulation, and heating system upgrades. We have a multilingual program intake through the website and application forms that have been translated in 3 languages, and all processes and support are available in 10 languages. We have a local team delivering the outreach, marketing, and assessments, and working with local contractors. And then finally, a really important feature of any energy efficiency program that's aimed at income qualified households is we have a health and safety budget. So almost 100% of the homes upgraded have needed some work. So this could be, you know, a smoke detector or carbon monoxide detector, or maybe addressing asbestos or mold. You know, it's about making the homes more comfortable and safe, and we can't just focus on energy efficiency in that case. We have to have support for health and safety as well. A little bit about the program eligibility. So we are really targeting households whose energy bills are unaffordable, and the homes that can have significant consumption reduced through energy efficiency upgrades. Because it's an income qualified program, we do have income levels that you must meet. And then the focus on detached homes, duplex, townhouses built before 1998. So a little bit about the numbers we have to date. So we've to date upgraded over 215 homes across all of the communities we're working in. and that's over 634 household members. We have an estimated 2.2 tons of CO2 equivalent per year per household being saved through these upgrades. And we are seeing of our participants an average energy burden of about 13%. So with energy poverty, that number being twice the average, or 6%, we're seeing people the average being quite above that 6% mark. And while the numbers are great, the really impactful part of this program is helping folks and making their homes safer, comfortable, and more affordable to heat and power. So we visited some homeowners this summer as we celebrated our launch, and pictured in the top left is Jennifer. She's a single mom who used to spend 27% of her income on energy bills. We were able to go in and improve her attic insulation from 2 inches to 8 inches. We replaced her 23-year-old water heater with a high efficiency model and provided air ceilings, as well as addressed some safety issues in her home. And so looking ahead, we are looking to scale the program. It is designed to be scalable. And we are upgrading additional homes in Calgary and Edmonton, thanks to support from the City of Calgary, the City of Edmonton, and NMAX. And so if you'd like to learn more about the program, how to support it, and the folks that are benefiting, you can go to the website here, homeupgradesprogram.ca, or feel free to reach out to me at that email. I am now going to turn it over to Graham with the City of Edmonton.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie, and thanks, Solar Alberta, for having me. My name is Graham Vixie, and I am a Community Program Coordinator with the City of Edmonton's Community Activation Team. I oversee Edmonton's current solar rebate program, which I will chat about alongside the topic of energy poverty. Also, my colleague, Lisa Dockman, is also online today and will likely assist with answering questions that you may have. At the top of the screen, you can see some acronyms that you may see to save some space on the slides, alongside the topics that I will cover. I will chat about Edmonton's climate plans and how they touch on energy poverty. I will explain energy poverty. I will discuss what the Change Homes for Climate Solar Rebate Program is and provide some history of the program. I will review some of the data collected through the Solar Rebate Program and outline how to participate. And lastly, I will chat about multi-unit residential buildings and why we are focusing attention on them. As many of you might know, Edmonton is on a transformational journey to becoming a climate resilient and low carbon city. As part of this work, we recently updated the Energy Transition Strategy, which outlines the actions we are taking to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. We've set ambitious targets. By 2025, we need to reduce GHG emissions by 35%. By 2030, we need a further GHG reduction by 50%, while also generating 10% of our energy or electricity locally. And by 2050, our goal is to have net zero GHGs per person in Edmonton. Achieving our goals will absolutely require community action. As leaders in your community, I'm excited to share more information about how we are achieving these targets with you. The Energy Transition Strategy contains actions towards eliminating energy poverty. An example seen on the slide is Pathway 2 of Strategy 12 on page 20 of the strategy, and outlines the goal of reducing energy poverty through energy efficiency programs such as the Home Upgrades Program that Stephanie chatted about. Energy poverty refers to the inability of households to maintain adequate access to energy services at reasonable costs. By adequate, we mean the level of energy consumption in the home necessary to meet basic health and wellness needs. The figure on the right shows where energy poor folks reside when considering income and home energy efficiency. They generally are lower income and reside in lower energy efficient homes. The Energy Advocacy Group, or the Energy Poverty Advocacy Group, Canadian Urban Sustainability Practitioners, determined that 1 in 6 Edmontonians, or roughly 72,625 households, pay more than double the national average of their income on energy bills. Stephanie mentioned this, it's roughly 6% is the national average, so double that. For which 38% spend more than 3 times that national average on income, and 18% spend a further 5% times, or 5 times more that national average. Home retrofits that improve energy efficiency and reduce costs are critically important to achieving Edmonton's energy poverty and resilience goals. The figure on the slides outline the current projected annual cost of energy in Edmonton. I should note that these figures exclude non-commodity rates, such as delivery charges or flat service fees. The projections from 2024 to 2050, seen as straight lines, are part of a business as usual scenario and show an increase of annual combined household energy costs increasing from $3,000 in 2022 to roughly $3,900 or $3,900 in 2050. Paying the ever-growing price of energy is challenging for those who are energy poor. A lot of research has been completed on the impacts to this group, and the list that I'm about to present on is no way comprehensive, but should be considered a quick overview of recent research projects underway at the City of Edmonton. First, health and safety. Generally an issue in older homes with older mechanical and electrical systems that come with a higher risk of delivery malfunctions and may force individuals to turn to unsafe heating practices, further increasing the safety risks. An example could include a higher frequency of sick days for school-age youth due to living in colder, more congested homes. It's also not strictly a heating problem any longer. Those without proper cooling over the last few summers have also been at a higher risk of heat-related illnesses. Another impact is social isolation. This is due to a social stigma attached with energy poverty. For instance, constrained budgets mean attending fewer social outings, or a reluctance to invite others over to a colder or hot home. This can lead to lower self-reported wellness for those individuals. And lastly, there are economic trade-offs. Those facing energy poverty face tough decisions between heating or cooling their home or buying groceries. These are the folks we are trying to target in our energy poverty program development. I'll now chat about Edmonton's Change Homes for Climate Solar Rebate Program. As Edmonton benefits from a strong solar resource and cold temperatures, we have optimal conditions for green and efficient electricity generation in the form of solar PV. Solar PV started as 11 installations, or roughly 45 kilowatts, in 2010 and has grown to 7,092 installations, or 62.4 megawatts, as of August 31st, 2024, marking a staggering increase of 138,617% in total installation capacity over the 14 years, according to EPCOR. A brief history of Edmonton's Solar Rebate Program. The Change Homes for Climate Solar Rebate Program launched in 2018 as a top-up to the Government of Alberta's Energy Efficiency Alberta Residential Solar Program, which was a top-up of 15 cents. At the end of the Energy Efficiency Alberta's program in 2019, Edmonton expanded the rebate from the 15-cent top-up to the 40 cents previous. On June 29th, 2019, the standalone solar program was launched, and under the Change for Homes banner, Change Homes for Climate banner. In 2022, the federal government announced the Greener Homes Grant, which stacked on Edmonton's rebate to offer more upfront cost savings. And more recently, in June of this year, the Solar Rebate for MERBs program was announced, focusing on multifamily buildings. From the initial launch of the standalone program in 2019 to today, 1,888 homes received $1.9 million in rebates, resulting in installation of 15 or roughly 16 megawatts of rooftop solar. This image on the slide is Councillor Jans during the Solar MERB launch event this year, and he provided that quote on the slide. The program is designed to help ensure that a greater diversity of Edmontonians can share in the environmental and financial benefits of solar energy. We are currently at roughly 65% or $865,000 of uptake of a total of $1.3 million available for this program. So far, the applications expand the benefit of solar being shared across roughly 1,500 dwelling units at this moment. For the same $865,000, the original program, not focused on MERB, would have benefited only roughly 285 dwelling units. With the MERB program, we are expected to spread the benefit of solar to an additional 1,200 MERB tenants who may not have benefited otherwise. Here are some details on the solar rebate for MERBs. The rebate reduces the upfront cost of solar PV systems by 50 cents per watt, or roughly 20 to 30% of the total upfront costs. The rebate cap is at $4,000 per dwelling unit. Each property owner or builder is eligible for a maximum of $100,000 in rebates per calendar year, which may include multiple projects. We have recently announced a deadline extension as of today. The new deadline for the program seen on the slides is December 16th, 2024 for submission of Part 1 of the application, and importantly, March 31st, 2025 of next year for the full submission of Part 2 of the application. The extension answers concerns of tight timelines and should allow more participation in the program. We also have, which Heather mentioned, the Clean Energy Improvement Program. The CEIP allows for 100%, up to 100% of at least 3 home retrofits, including solar, which can be financed through your property taxes. MERBs are also eligible to participate. Visit the website. I believe it was linked in chat for more details. And quickly, here's an outline of the roadmap. First, you need to hire a qualified solar provider. Solar Alberta has already showcased their excellent qualified solar provider dashboard or directory. Step 2, design a solar system to maximize solar potential, and the providers typically offer this service. Step 3, submit a Part 1 rebate application. Once this has been verified, you are pre-qualified for the money. That deadline is now December 16th. Step 4, install solar PV. And step 5, submit a Part 2 rebate application. That deadline is now March 31st, 2025. And why MERBs? Residents of multifamily buildings are historically underserved by home energy efficiency and renewable energy programs. The overwhelming majority of rebate applications of previous iterations of the rebate participants are single-family homeowners who typically fall under medium or higher income brackets. The city was concerned that we were providing an incentive to those who are already able to afford the upfront cost of solar. So how do we expand the benefit of reduced energy bills that solar PV provides to those who could benefit the most? The city believes the solar rebate program will diversify the benefits of solar to these groups. Some quick stats on the historical participation of the city's solar rebate program. Single-family homes make up between 97 and 98% of the total projects who participated in our rebate, and 98% of the rebates amount, the total dollar figure allocated, and the installed capacity on the roofs. But with MERBs, which represent only 2% of the total projects, we've seen a much higher proportion, roughly 14% of the units that have benefited from reduced energy bills that solar can provide. There are a few challenges that I wanted to discuss regarding the expanding the benefits of solar to low-income individuals and other deserving groups historically excluded from incentive programs. Most energy-poor households are tenants and renters. Multi-unit buildings and renters commonly face an issue called the split incentive problem. Put simply, the split incentive problem states that those who want solar and its benefits do not have the influence to install it. As renters, tenants are not able to install solar on their properties, that decision typically falls on property owners. Property owners, who would also benefit from operational cost savings of solar, face numerous information, technical, financial, and other barriers to solar deployment, and make market penetration of solar on MERBs low. These barriers include The added complexity of multi-unit residential buildings themselves, the physical buildings, a more complex building ownership model, a less straightforward energy payment and decision-making structure, a higher upfront cost on these larger buildings, and generally the older age of the buildings making lower income, the older age of the buildings on lower income for lower income folks. The solar rebate for MURBs addresses high upfront costs faced by building owners and managers. The city recognizes that there are still challenges to reach tenants and the energy poor, and will continue to develop programs to support these groups. And I think I went over time, but I think the next step is a Q&A. So thank you for listening to me, and I will pass this off.
Thank you very much, Graham and Stephanie and Heather, for some enlightening presentations. And we are also joined by Lisa Dockman of the City of Edmonton, who's also going to help in answering some questions. So I guess it looks like we have a couple of Q&A questions already in the Q&A, and it's just a reminder to those of you who would like to ask questions, please pop them into the Q&A box. And if you like somebody's question, you can use the thumbs up signal to upvote their question so that there's a greater chance that question will be asked. So it looks like the first question here is for you, Graham, regarding, Lisa as well, regarding the multifamily unit program. Changing deadlines is very challenging for the market. The new timeline is still very tight, given that most decided not to apply based on the old deadline and did not therefore move the process. What is the way forward that the City of Edmonton is planning in this?
So that's a great question. I think what I'd start by saying is that we had an opportunity to reopen the existing program specifically for multifamily buildings, and we just decided to take that opportunity and infuse that $1.3 million exclusively for multifamily buildings, and understand that only a certain audience or folks would be able to take advantage of the timelines. So I would just say that we're still working on the research and development for what might be next and kind of how we might continue to support these really important objectives. So stay tuned.
And I'll add to that. If you are finding that the timelines are still too tight, reach out to us and let us know that they're too tight and give us some reasons, because we could leverage that information for the next iteration. So feel free to reach out to me. I can provide my email in the chat, and we can discuss where you're at with projects and how we get those to move forward.
Amazing. Thanks, Graham and Lisa. The next one comes from Stephen, who is saying, would you agree that from an energy production and land use perspective, residential PV will more directly resolve the need for both energy efficiency increases, climate change mitigation, and future plug-in hybrid electrical vehicle charging challenges? I'm not sure who this question is directed to, but I guess if anyone wants to comment on Stephen's question, that would be great.
I'm just going to reread it myself here because I'm just struggling to pick up the question. Would you agree that from an energy production and land use perspective, residential PV will be more directly or both? Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not quite understanding the question. I wonder if Stephen might want to rewrite it.
I can try to take a stab.
Okay, thanks,
I think
Stephanie.
I know what you're getting at, Stephen.
Okay, great.
If I'm interpreting your question right, I think what you're saying is, increasing residential solar PV, would mean that we're using renewable energy as an energy source rather than natural gas. So reducing emissions if we just switch our energy source to one that's renewable and zero emissions. So then, yeah, we perhaps wouldn't need to do as much energy efficiency. It would help the grid in terms of capacity because we're putting on like decentralized energy sources. So I certainly think, and there's still lots of opportunity for us to increase residential solar. Still lots of buildings out there to put solar on without needing to use land. So I don't know if Graham or Heather has additional thoughts on that.
Yeah, I can talk to the vehicle piece as well. It does synergize quite well with an electrification of transportation or of heating. So if you have solar PV on your home, it'll first meet the loads internally. So if that is a heat pump that you're using to heat your home, or that is to charge your EVs, you will save costs. You won't have to pay for that, those electrons. I know I shouldn't say it that way, but you won't have to pay for that energy going into those units, and you will be self-sufficient. Not quite self-sufficient, but yeah, you'll reduce the cost as well, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. And Stephen, if that was not what you were getting at, feel free to put more information in the chat and we can try to address your question in a different way, but thank you very much. Sean, this question is for all three panelists today, is asking, what is the greatest legal barrier seen in the installation of solar energy?
I guess I can touch on that a little bit. So one of the concerns we hear a lot, which is a bit of a frustration, is that Alberta's microgeneration regulation only allows homes or businesses to put on as much solar as that which would offset their electricity use for the year over the course of the year. So that's a pretty good incentive for a lot of folks, but for some people, they don't feel like that's enough incentive. They would like to be able to utilize their entire roof, and that is the reason they're not adopting solar. So I would say that's a pretty big barrier right now. It is something, when the government of Alberta does open up the microgeneration regulation in the coming years, we will be asking them to remove the cap on microgenerators, especially residential folks, because you know, they're really not going to overburden the grid with their production. So you know, that might be a concern for the larger commercial installations, that, oh, we can't handle everything you want to give us, but it's really not a concern for a smaller home. So I think that's a big barrier we face, and that we hear about a lot, for sure. So in terms of legal, I go straight to regulation, and that's where I land. Of course, that's residential, which is what we're talking a lot about today. I think most folks are aware that the greatest legal barrier right now to solar uptake in Alberta and all renewables really is the fact that the government of Alberta has imposed a buffer zone. So you can't actually do wind energy, electricity anywhere from Calgary to the mountains. So it's a very, very large buffer zone. And in that area, your ability to do solar is also quite limited right now. You have to jump through a lot of regulatory hurdles, red tape. So that's another legal barrier right now that that sort of utility scale or power plant solar is facing, which is arguably not what we're really here chatting about today, but since you want to chat barriers, I'm happy to mention that that one is out there.
I have something I might add. I was just going to say that, especially in the multifamily context, I'm really grateful for an event that Solar Alberta delivered maybe a year ago, specifically on the barriers to solar and multifamily buildings. But one thing that stands out from that, but also from our experiences, it's a major barrier. Decision-making processes are a major barrier in multifamily buildings, especially condos, or any building where there's like shared rooftop ownership or different models. And so whatever the systems in place to make decisions, there's a lot of really neat programs popping up around like the right, it's similar for EV charging, but the right to charge, or the right to be able to invest in solar energy for that building. And we see them popping up in places all over the states, or for example in BC, just to help facilitate decision making in support of renewable energy or EV charging infrastructure, so that multifamily occupants can benefit.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Lisa. Anyone who's ever been in a condo or on a condo board knows how hard it is to change your bylaws once they're already in place. So we went through this at my previous home, just trying to encourage folks to, you know, smoke outside was almost impossible because you had to get so many owners to come to a meeting just to change that one little thing. So one thing we really encourage at Solar Alberta is, if you're building a condo, please throw it in your draft bylaws that people can have solar. I mean, it's really not a huge problem as long as it's in those bylaws, but changing condo bylaws after the fact is just a really big challenge in Alberta. And of course, fourplexes, what I've recently learned, because I'm in a fourplex, and I thought, oh, mine is freehold, which means we all get our own roofs. But then when I went to look at moving into another fourplex, I discovered that the vast majority of fourplexes going in around the city of Edmonton are going in as condos, because I guess that's the easiest path through the permitting process. And they're going in with standard bylaws that they pull out of a template document, and they don't have anything about solar in them. And so then you have to negotiate again with your the people living around you, which sometimes is really easy. Sometimes it's a breeze if everyone is say, I'd like to get solar, and sure, go for it, Joe. But unfortunately, it's not always that easy. So thanks for mentioning that, Lisa. It's your own little legal barrier. We're talking legal barriers. It's like your little condo fiefdom, and you have your own little legal barriers within it. So that can be a real challenge.
And I do think there are things that other levels of government can do. I hope I'm quoting it correctly, but I feel like in BC, they actually changed the decision making from, I think it was 75% to pass to 50% when it came to a specific renewable energy or EV infrastructure decision, just to enable kind of facilitate that, which I thought was a really interesting one.
That's a great idea. That's probably a provincial piece of legislation. I bet we could work on that. Thanks, Lisa. I'm actually in the process of renewing our government relations goals, so feel free to throw all your ideas at me. That would be great. And I think that would solve a lot more problems for condos than just solar. There are many issues they can't resolve with such a high bar to change bylaws.
Stephanie, did you want to weigh in at all on the topic?
No, I think it was well answered.
Perfect. The next question is, can you touch on how virtual power plants might impact the overloading issue?
Thank you. I love virtual power plants. Actually, we're going to hopefully have a workshop on that in the new year, although it'll be super nerdy, so not everybody will necessarily want to jump at that one. So we actually have virtual power plants going in on my block right now, some of the first in Edmonton, and Landmark Homes is working together with EPCOR on those. And very cool. We have basically homes that are entirely net zero, entirely solared, and they also have air source heat pumps. And then additionally, they're going to have their own battery. And so when you combine the solar with the battery, and then some awesome technology to kind of, decide who's giving and who's taking, you can have this beautiful virtual power plant. So I'm not going to get into all the specifics, the awesome nerdy details. We'll definitely have a nerd out session for that in the new year. But virtual power plants are really cool because, of course, it gets rid of that issue of anyone overproducing, right? If somebody wants to give more solar than the grid can handle, and you have a battery, then all you have to do is say, no, thank you. We're not going to receive what you have to offer right now. Why don't you store it until later when we want it? And so the grid can start sending that signal and start saying, yeah, sure, we'd love your electricity now. Oh, no, we're overloaded. You store it there. And you can have this really smart integrated system with a virtual power plant. And the more of those we have around the city, the more we can address grid reliability issues, the more we can forget about these silly microgeneration regulation limitations on how much you produce, because who cares how much you produce as long as you're not giving it to us before we want it. It's basically giving the grid the power of consent. Do you consent to me giving you power or not? Yes, I do. And then if they give you the power, great. And if they don't, you keep it in your battery. So I think it's going to be a wonderful addition. The challenge we face right now for virtual power plants in the province is really just that there's like zero incentives in place right now for anyone to purchase a battery, because there are no sort of price mechanisms for saying, please store your electricity for a while. As soon as we start getting some proper demand side management in this province, which other provinces have, then there will be natural incentives for folks to store a little bit of their excess electricity and pass it on to the grid later, or use electricity less at some times. There are definitely jurisdictions around the world and around Canada already introducing various pricing incentives for batteries. Most of our members have been studying batteries for ages, and they are so ready to start rolling out more and more batteries for homeowners. We actually have a course on that, and our members are really keen and ready to start rolling that out. We're just waiting on a few incentives, and they don't have to be handouts. I know we're talking a lot about handouts today, But those incentives don't have to be handouts. They can also just be price incentives, where basically folks are told, if you give us more electricity at this time or use less at this time, you're going to see the benefits on your electricity bills. So those are some other incentive options that we need to see at play in Alberta. And then I think we'll have a proliferation of virtual power plants, and that will really help to address our grid reliability issues and any other issue that we might have. So very exciting. Thanks for the question. Not sure exactly how it relates to our equity discussion today, but I'll think about that for a little while. And by the time we have our virtual power plant nerd out session, I'll be ready with some questions for the presenters about equity on that. Because as we all know, solar can cost a fair bit, but batteries cost even more. So we definitely want to see the cost of those batteries come down and some programs for them in the years to come.
Good point, Heather. Next we have Sarah, who is asking, can any of you touch on any pushback there might be from the oil and gas industry and the transition from oil and gas as energy to cleaner, more sustainable forms of energy like solar, especially when it comes to pushback from oil and gas corporations?
I can talk about that a little bit. The first thing I would say is that pushback you see from oil and gas, I'm finding it's generally not from the workers. So a lot of the workers identify as energy workers. They are transitioning to the solar sector or going in between. So I don't find that there's too much pushback in terms of everyday Albertans and their perspective on this. You get a little bit, and I know we saw some in the US election, and especially around EVs, that's sort of a sensitive point for some folks. But I think that's mainly around the manufacturing sector and less of an issue when it comes to sort of the oil and gas sector, because I think in Alberta, many people just identify as energy people. So whether it's solar or whether it's wind or whether it's oil, we're just energy people. That's what we do. That's our identity. That's what we export. So I think that there's less of an issue there. In terms of pushback from the oil and gas industry as a whole, certainly where I see that from an equity perspective, the most often is, like, for example, promotions around natural gas furnaces. So you'll see a lot of folks are lobbying hard to get program organizers like the city of Edmonton or like Ecotrust. They'll be lobbying them to say, please include furnaces in your plan. And then they'll have folks like energy advisors going around saying to everybody, oh, you should get a nice furnace. Instead of saying you should electrify your home, you should get yourself on an air source heat pump or a ground source heat pump, and then you should produce extra solar. So that's where we tend to see the pushback the most. I think it's really disappointing, because what happens is you get low-income people convinced time and time again to buy a high efficiency, furnace, which is great in the short term. Like in the short term, sure, it's better than what they had, but it's not giving families the long-term savings that they could realize through the combination of an electrified system, where they could have an electric, a heat pump that's air sourced, and then combine that with solar. So the people who are adopting these natural gas products, or with fanciful notions that they might someday become hydrogen products, they're going to miss out on long-term benefits. And that's really sad for me, especially when I see really big long-term investments being made and knowing that it's not going to result in long-term benefit. Oh, that I find really difficult. So I'm frequently involved in conversations trying to really say, hey, let's get the heat pumps, let's combine them with the solar. That's the best long-term strategy. And there is a lot of pushback there. There's a lot of folks who will say, oh, go with the natural gas and then you can convert it to hydrogen, as if it's just like, oh, it'll switch to hydrogen and then it'll be green. First of all, no, you can't just swap out natural gas for hydrogen that easily. You do require some additional infrastructure. And then secondly, I have been told by hydrogen experts that we will not be seeing green hydrogen in Alberta. So anyone who thinks that you're going to swap out your natural gas for green hydrogen apparently is being led a lot of malarkey. So that's a frustration I see on a daily basis. I even see city councillors being misled in that direction. And so we do have to work hard to counteract some of those myths that are taking shape in our province.
Yeah, and I'll quickly jump in there. Sorry. I think it's tough to kind of talk against specifically electrification because there's a lot of benefit, and I think they realize that, and it's a topic that is tough to fight against. I think there's cost savings, and the moment you bring up cost savings, I think you lose your argument. Though right now electricity and natural gas aren't the same cost, and in the short term, as Heather mentioned, there's some short-term savings. That may not be the case in the future. So yeah, we just have to kind of go back to cost and environmental benefits of renewable energy to kind of counter that point.
Thanks
Yeah.
very much.
I should just say, Stephanie, that we do try and focus on the positives a lot at Solar Alberta. So even though we see some of this and we will speak out if someone's being led a lie or something, you know, we do really feel like we're going to make more progress if we don't just sit around fighting with each other all day. And, you know, there are a lot of natural gas and oil advocates out there who are also solar advocates. They just wear both hats, and that's pretty normal in Alberta. So even though we try and catch misinformation before it's spread, and we do have concerns, and obviously Solar Alberta is pro-solar first and foremost, we are cautious not to do a lot of bashing of the other sectors because, you know, it's kind of like all hands on deck. Alberta will never transition if we just sit around bashing the oil and gas sector. We actually need them desperately to transition our economies. So definitely worthwhile critiquing, but then thinking about how we can all work together on this transition.
Absolutely. Krista does have a related question. She said she's experienced that exact recommendation, HE furnace instead of a heat pump from customers or companies, and she's just wondering how to go about finding companies to inquire about or that will not do this.
Yeah, actually, we have a directory, and in our directory, you know, you're going to find some companies that are a little bit more solar friendly, obviously. We do have some heat pump companies there, so you can actually go and get your own quotes. We do have some folks who do energy audits there. You may still get them promoting you know, a high efficiency furnace. It's really just important to be knowledgeable yourself and go into those conversations saying, you know, I'm considering an air source heat pump, because they might be shy to even mention that to you because there are those myths around how you don't have technology advanced enough for our climate. That's not true. It's actually fine now. There are cold weather air source heat pumps. And so some people just have misinformation. There's not necessarily ill intent, but you do really have to ask them those questions. And then sometimes you have to go and get your own quotes. You can't necessarily rely on them to refer you to someone because they probably have a mutual referral relationship with someone who's expert in furnaces. And it's a little bit harder to develop those relationships with a relatively new sector, which is the air source folks. So we're trying to help folks develop those relationships so that they can make the referrals for you. We do have a Solar Alberta Facebook group. Come on there, ask people who they got their heat pumps through, how they manage this. Lots of other people have been there before you, so you can definitely brainstorm together. But yeah, unfortunately, if you're getting your home looked at, you're probably going to have to bring it up because it's still not standard in Alberta. But if you bring it up, they usually are aware that that technology exists, and they might fight you a little bit on it just because of what they're used to.
Thanks, Heather. The next question is really timely given that the BC government has just announced some incentives for batteries. And so this person is asking, do you know of any or foresee the pursuit of incentives for communal or municipal owned battery installations for electrical storage for neighborhoods or MRFs?
Either of you want to start on that, Lisa?
Yeah, I just thought I would mention related, just to highlight the Clean Energy Improvement Program, battery storage. And not only is solar, but also solar batteries are eligible for 100% financing. And that is for both commercial and residential settings. MURBs are a little bit, fall in between a little bit, but there is some advocacy going on to increase the cap so that larger financing can occur for multifamily buildings. And then I think this question to me sounds like a really good opportunity to talk about an update to the energy transition and climate resilience strategies that will be occurring in the near future. The big city charters policy requires us to update them every 5 years or to revisit them every 5 years. And that one's coming up, and there'll be some opportunity to share insights on what you think. And there'll be a lot of research on what makes the most sense and opportunities for engagement to share what you think will be most impactful and important to guide that roadmap for Edmonton.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Lisa. It's good to hear that the City of Edmonton's including batteries in their clean energy improvement program. And I know the City of Calgary is launching or planning to launch a commercial clean energy improvement program in the new year. So hopefully they'll consider that as well and consider adding MURBs into the mix. I don't know of any incentives right now that are planned other than those types of financing programs. But we're certainly staying tuned, and we do have an incentives page on our website. So when we see new incentives launched, whether it's financing, whether it's rebates, whether it's programs like Stephanie's, we're going to be trying to update that page and just keep it accurate. But most of the solar installers on our website, we have over 160 business members. They know this stuff inside and out. So if you ever want to know what the incentives are like right now, you can also just hit one of them up. If you're on our directory, you can actually look to see who does batteries. And those are the folks who will know the battery incentives really well because it is their bread and butter. So yeah, hopefully we'll get more incentives there. I do believe that a lot of the wire providers are really trying to move in this direction. I know Epcor, NMAX, Atco Fortis, they're all really trying to say, hey, let's get more distributed batteries. Let's not just rely on the large battery farms with the solar farms. Let's have this throughout the whole province. And those wire providers are really trying to push the envelope on this. So many of them are members of ours, and we're just really trying to encourage that along because we do want to see both solar and batteries at both scales. It's really important to have them in the microcosm, the micro scale, but we also need those utility scale supports. So we're really trying to push hard on both.
Thanks, Heather. This question is directed to Lisa and Graham to submit a City of Edmonton multi-unit residential program. Does the applicant, as a builder or property owner, need to submit an individual unit-wise application for the block or building, or can they submit a single application for multiple units together for the same block just to avoid multiple unit-wise applications?
Yeah, so as the question kind of highlights, it's fairly complicated. The way we're going about it is we're going by lot. So there's a specific way that we highlight that, but it's not per unit. So we have applications that have 20 or 30 units. We have applications that have 300 units. So it's by property or lot is the technical or the legal term we're using. So to find that out, you could reach out to me and I can kind of help you go through the process of determining if your multi-unit residential building meets the minimum of 4 units per lot. Anything above that or equal to 4, you'd be great. If you're below that, then unfortunately that's the cutoff. And I can help you guide. I can guide you through that if need be.
Thanks, Graham. That's amazing. David Patterson had put a comment in the chat. There needs to be a solar design guide for home builders. I see too many infills that have roofs pointing north. Does anyone want to touch on that? Heather, maybe.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for that point, David. So there is actually solar ready guidelines. They have been produced by CANREA, the Canadian Renewable Energy Association, in conjunction with NRCan. So those are on their websites. We then took the solar ready guidelines, we distilled them into sort of 10 easy steps. So we have a checklist on our website for home builders, or even if you're going out buying a home and you want to make sure you can add solar later. So we have those that checklist on our website. We also have some free YouTube webinars all about solar ready design. So please check those out and pass them around to builder friends. We're going to run that session at our solar show again between February 3rd and 7th this year. And we're working with the city of Edmonton and hopefully the city of Calgary on some solar ready bylaws, which are supposed to be rolled out by the end of 2025 in Edmonton. And we're really hoping to see that those bylaws will have some comments on things like new homes going in facing north, because I think we all see that and we're just driving around thinking, what the heck's going on here? We live in a northern province. So definitely great point, David. We are working on that. Please do engage with your municipality on solar ready bylaws. They are starting to take shape around the province, and we're happy to be involved in supporting that work. I know Lisa and Graham have also been working with the City of Edmonton's bylaw team on that matter, and I'm so glad you guys are in conversation as well, since you folks are the experts.
Yeah, Heather, so I'm really glad to hear you mention both Solar Ready and EV Ready are actions within the Climate Resilience Action Plan, Climate Resilience PD, Planning and Development Action Plan, that went to Council in Edmonton on October 29th. I just thought I would mention there's also another action in there. Action 7 is to incorporate climate resilience standards into the city's design and construction standards. And so each of these actions is going to have engagement, scoping, and decision making around them as they get rolled out. So definitely an opportunity to influence that farther, in addition to the bylaws Heather mentions.
Amazing. Thank you very much. As of now, there are no more questions in our Q&A box. So if you're bouncing to ask a question, you better get your fingers going. Type that question out. Otherwise, I'm just wondering if anyone has some final thoughts or comments they'd like to make from the panel.
I just wanted to say thanks so much to Stephanie and Graham for the work you're doing on this. When I started at Solar Alberta 4 years ago, we used to have a presentation about building equity in the solar sector, and that presentation featured 0 initiatives that were at play at that time. It was a presentation we did to try and spur on programs and initiatives like yours, and I'm really glad to see that they're starting to take root. And that we actually have feature speakers now instead of folks just having to listen to me talk for half an hour. So thank you so much. It's really wonderful to see your innovation and things that we didn't even imagine are happening. And so that's even more exciting, is when you start a conversation and then it gets really creative. I chatted with the City of Calgary the other day. They said one of their main equity goals with their clean energy improvement program is to fix the application process so that it's not just for people who have the opportunity to sit at a computer at 7 or 8 in the morning. They said they got to get away from the Ticketmaster approach because that's not equitable. And I couldn't agree more, but I didn't think we could get away from the Ticketmaster approach to programming. And so it's really nice to see folks like you and the City of Calgary as well working on developing new systems that will benefit more Albertans. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Heather. I'd like to add that I think we're also seeing a groundswell from below. I think during that council meeting that that Lisa mentioned on October 29th, we saw a lot of interest in including a minimum room temperature addition to Action 7 that Lisa mentioned. So people are just starting to feel the impacts. People are getting too hot, people are getting too cold, and they don't have the ability to adapt. So more and more folks are getting on board, and I think we'll start to see more and more movement as these types of actions progress.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly add something as well. Thank you to Solar Alberta again for having us and for hosting this important conversation. I think like we are seeing it rise to the top of our discussions because of affordability. As Graham said, we're actually people are starting to personally feel the impacts of climate change, not only in developing countries where it has been they've experienced it the most, but also at home. So it's I think it's really, we're seeing that shift to make sure that everybody can benefit from our energy transition, being very mindful of the climate impacts and also the opportunities being available to everybody. And it was great to see the great turnout and interest in this webinar today.
With that, there's no more questions in the Q&A. So I just want to say thank you again to Graham Biskey, Stephanie Drozda, Heather McKenzie, and also thank you to Lisa Dockman from the City of Edmonton for joining us. And then also thank you so much to Chris Kozowski from Park Power for supporting this session in particular, and again to Firefly Solar for sponsoring this year's seminar series, as well as to all of the participants who showed up and gave us their lunch hour to learn about this. And we look forward to seeing you again at our next seminar in January.